Hey everyone. So I had you do a reading in this class from a great book, which is called The Second Machine Age, about something called Moore's Law. And I wanted us to talk about Moore's Law for a couple of reasons. Uh, First of all, because I think it's really interesting and because it's something that we should know about technology, which is that it is growing at this really incredibly fast speed. But secondly, because it actually brings in a pattern that I think is worth addressing. And so if we think about the patterns we've done so far, we've kind of done six so far. So the six that I would say that we've talked about are linear, constant, quadratic, inverse, or reciprocal, depending. We talked a little bit about inverse square when we did, right? So those four here are what we started the year with. We talked about inverse square when we did gravity, which is basically inverse but more intense. We talked a little bit about sine or cosine, depending, um, when we did waves. But the one I want to talk about today is actually the one that I think I hear a lot, specifically when we looked at quadratic. And I heard a lot of you say this word, and it's exponential. And the reason I want us to talk about exponential is because it is truly one of the most extreme patterns that we get in physics. And so, if we think about like a standard quadratic, in fact, maybe I should draw a standard quadratic for us to see and compare. Like, yes, we get this big increase, but something that is exponential truly has like this immense extreme increase. Um, and it specifically happens in cases like the one that we see in this reading. And so, this reading has mentions that apocryphal story of like a chessboard, right? And so, um, this man beats the emperor at chess, and the emperor says, "Ah, yes, you are so intelligent. Let me reward you. What would you like?" Um, and the man says that he just wants 1 grain of rice on the first chess square. And then for every chess square after that, just double it. So you'll have 2 on the second, and 4 on the third, and 8 here. And the emperor says, "Yeah, that seems reasonable. Let's do it." Um, what the reading gets at is like up to about the halfway point of the board, 32nd square. It is fairly reasonable. It's, what is it, like 4 fields of rice. Okay. So here we still have 4 fields of rice, and it's a fairly reasonable thing. But by the time we get to the 64th square, the 64th doubling, we end up having more grains of rice than there have ever been atoms in the universe. And that is, I think, where people sometimes lose the picture of exactly how extreme an exponential increase is. So for exponential increase, we're talking about something where we're doing the same thing, in this case, doubling it, over and over and over and over. And of course, the thing is that you're not just doubling that first grain of rice, you get to double every new grain of rice you get. And that's part of what makes exponential growth so extreme. Um, Moore's law basically says that this kind of extreme doubling applies to technology. And it's interesting because Moore's original statement of Moore's law had to do with like the number of transistors you could fit on a certain size circuit board. and he said that we were going to double that every year. And he was pretty much right. We negotiate back and forth on whether it's a year or 18 months. Um, and then, but we've also seen not only was he right with like transistors on a circuit board, um, he was also correct about kind of everything that you can measure in technology. So, um, the amount of transistors you can afford for $1 also doubles each year to 18 months. The amount of processing speed you can get for $1 also doubles every year to 18 months. It's actually a little crazy how much Moore's law applies to every angle of technology from both a cost and an efficacy side. And so that's why I wanted us to talk about it, because it also means that things are getting not just better, but so much better that from the first half of the chessboard, we may not even be able to understand how much better that second half is. I used the example when we talked about quantum mechanics of quantum computing. And when I was in high school, that was something that we kind of thought of as like a pipe dream. Like we thought like maybe 100 years in the future we would be doing quantum computing, and we're doing it now in realistic and applicable ways. And that's kind of insane, but all it is exponential growth, right? All it is the fact that once you double your processing power once, then you get to use all that extra processing power to work towards doubling it again and again and again and again. Um, and so a lot of people think of some of the emerging things that have happened with technology recently as, and to be clear, I'm thinking about like generative AI and its availability to every person, um, or robotics or automation. All of those have had immense growth recently. A lot of people think of that as new. They almost think of it as like a third revolution, right? So we have like the scientific revolution that transitions into the industrial revolution, and then we have the computer revolution. And then is this a new one? And so in this book, basically, Brynjolfsson and McAfee are making the claim that, like, no, it's not a new revolution. It's actually just the second half of the chessboard of the computer revolution. So as computers got better and better, they were able to make computers better and better. And that doubling, that Moore's law kicks in. And now we're seeing what we think of as second half technologies, which are so different from the first half as to almost seem like a completely different story. And that's actually, if you look at like an exponential graph, right? Like, what do we have? We have this first half where it really doesn't look that different from my quadratic, and then it takes off. And so we are in that second half now, with technology, and we're seeing that exponential growth and what it really means. But what I want you to take out of that is what that means is exponentials and exponential growth are a really, really powerful pattern, that we're going to see in a lot of places, but also like don't underestimate the power. And when we look at something that is maybe just a nice old quadratic, don't be too quick to assign that name because it really carries a lot of power with it. All right. Thanks so much.